This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English. In today's show, there is no Dan the Man. I know. Fantastic news. But there is some bad news too. There is only me in today's show. Yep, that's right. So just my boring voice. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues. That is what happens when you have a podcast and you don't know anything about technology like Dan and I. Anyway, even if Dan has abandoned me for today, I will start the show as always with a review. Today's review is from Marina, who is a student of mine, I must say. But again, I would like to stress the fact that I did not, have not, and will not pay her for the review. Everyone is free to, leave a review or do anything. It's a free world. So Marina's review says, I love your podcast as it makes my English improve and makes me feel chuffed about it. So I think this is the second week in a row we have some rock and roll vocabulary in the review. The word chuffed, very nice, which means happy. So obviously she is happy that she is improving her English and I'm happy that she's listening. So I have also received a few comments about Dan the Man, saying how basically no one can understand him. My favourite comment was that he speaks like he has a potato in his mouth, which is something I found extremely funny, and I also told Dan this. So hopefully next time he, will speak without a potato in his mouth. In fact, I told him to pull his socks up. So, pull his socks up. What does that mean? Good question. If you tell someone to pull his or her or their socks up, it means to tell them to improve. It's like a metaphor that we use. So, perfect example is this. I said, Dan, no one understands you. You need to do better. Pull your socks up. And socks is actually the topic of today's episode because today apparently is International Wear No Socks Day. Okay, so socks are obviously the piece of clothing that goes between your shoes and your feet. I know it is Wear No Socks Day, but I personally find wearing no socks absolutely disgusting because my feet sweat. And what does sweat mean? Good question. It's the liquid your body produces when you are hot, basically. But good news for me, it's not just my feet that sweat with no socks apparently, because your feet are the sweatiest part of the body, and socks apparently help you absorb this sweat. Okay, so they actually serve a very important purpose. Okay, so I know it's Wear No Socks Day, but that is just unhygienic. Okay, so just think about that. So obviously it's no problem wearing socks and shoes in the winter, but when it's hot, it can be a little bit of a problem. Because, if you wear shorts and then people can see your socks, it's not the coolest thing to do in the world. And something else, which is definitely not cool, is to wear sandals with socks on, sort of like Jesus. Although I'm not sure he actually did that, but, if you wear socks and sandals, people say you look like Jesus. But apparently the first socks the archaeologists found were actually attached to a sandal. Okay, so socks apparently were actually born with sandals. So the next time you laugh at someone for looking like Jesus, just think about that, okay? Although I must say, in my opinion, if someone wears socks and sandals, well, at a minimum, they should go to prison. But, or be killed. One of the two, I think, is a fair punishment for that crime against fashion. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the history of socks. Apparently, socks were made from animal skins or animal hair. So I'm sure that was very comfortable and a very pleasant sensation to be walking on animal skin. But apparently that's what people did. And if you're asking yourself, what animal would Martin like as a sock? My answer would be a tiger, because I think that would look quite cool and maybe soft. Okay, so maybe you think about that. What animal would you like to have as a sock? Okay, something worth thinking about. And at this point, I would just like to say I have not killed an animal to wear as a sock, and I would never do that, even though I do hate animals. So another fact I got about socks, I think this is quite standard, is that there are some sock rules apparently, and one of the rules is that you should wear the same colour sock as your trousers. This is something which I definitely do not do, and I often wear crazy socks, rock and roll socks, you may say. In fact, when I worked in an office, my boss told me off once for wearing crazy socks. And so when I say he told me off, I mean that he wasn't happy and said some sort of bad things to me. This phrasal verb, to tell someone off, is often used, let's say, with a mother and a child. Say, like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. That is, someone telling you off. In my case, he said, why are you wearing those socks to work? They're disgusting. You should wear some black professional socks. So after he told me off for wearing crazy socks, I asked myself, what are professional socks? What has the world come to when we have to talk about professional socks? So now I don't work there anymore, and I wear whatever socks I want to work. And my classes love them, I think. Well, I imagine that they love them. But in reality, they probably think, what is he doing wearing those ridiculous socks? But, as long as it's okay in my mind, then no problem. So next on the sock list of useless facts is about odd socks. So what are odd socks? Good question. Odd socks are when you wear socks, but they are not the same. So let's say you wear a red sock on one foot and a blue sock on the other. And that is something that I actually hate. I don't know why. I would actually prefer to wear no socks and have smelly, sweaty feet than wear odd socks. I just think you look absolutely ridiculous if you wear odd socks. But odd is actually one of my favourite words in English because it is also used for numbers. So we have even numbers, for example, which is like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then we have odd numbers, which are like 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, etc. And we can even use it to say someone is strange. Apparently, this is because odd numbers, remember like 5, 7, 9, are not normal. So it means strange. And if someone is odd, they are strange. Dan is a bit odd. He's not a normal person. He's a bit strange, so he's odd. Another example of something that is odd is if you maybe went to look for a rock and roll English episode on a Monday or Thursday and didn't find it, you'd think, that's odd, because every Monday and Thursday there is a rock and roll English episode, and today there isn't. So, what's going on? It's very odd. One more fact about the odd thing. Apparently, people that wear odd socks are generally married because they choose their socks in the dark because they don't want to wake up their partner. And then they obviously can't really see and choose two socks which they think are the same, which actually aren't. So, next time I see someone wearing odd socks, I'll just think, That's a considerate person that didn't want to switch on the light and wake up his or her partner. Also, another reason why I don't wear odd socks, because, I'm not married. Another fact on my list is that the world's most expensive sock is called the Emperor Diamond Sock, and it is worth £30 million. So when I say that it is worth, I mean it has a value of £30 million, which is quite a lot of money to spend on a sock. Another thing is it says Emperor Diamond Sock. So, is that one? Because if you're spending £30 million, you want to be, having a pair of socks, like two. And it also says that the sock, remember not socks, the sock is made from gold and jewels. So, how comfortable is that sock going to be? You have to ask yourself before spending that money on the sock. Socks also came before toilet paper, which is quite strange because, if you think, what do I need first, socks or toilet paper? I personally would like toilet paper because I would prefer my bum to be clean than my feet. But I suppose people obviously used bidets or something similar to wash their bums. But I'm English, so I don't really know what a bidet is because we are animals. So my list of facts is not finished there, so don't worry. Still have some sock information for you. This is about losing socks. Apparently a family of 4 loses on average, so the medium value, 60 socks every year. So, that's a lot. And I also lose my socks all of the time, and it does my head in. So when I say that it does my head in, it makes me angry, makes me very frustrated. Also, doing podcasts on my own does my head in because I feel quite stupid talking to myself loudly. But, Dan the man is not here, so I'm doing this on my own. Okay, so last fact, and then I will leave you alone and you will not have to listen to my boring voice anymore. It is that the sales of socks go through the roof at Christmas. So when I say go through the roof, that's to say something increases in an extremely high way, because obviously people buy many socks for Christmas presents. So the sales of socks increases and goes through the roof, like increases a lot. And my only comment about this is buying socks as a Christmas present is the shittest present you can buy anyone. I don't know how you can even pretend to be excited when you open a present and it's a pair of socks. Normally you try to sort of make the other person feel good and say, oh yeah, this is great, it's just what I needed, thank you so much. But when it's socks, it's difficult to even do that. You just have to say, yep, thanks. Although I do get a lot of socks at Christmas from my mum usually, but she buys me lots of other great stuff. The socks are just to, make up the numbers so I've got something else to open. But if any of you listeners are thinking of buying me a Christmas present, which you're probably not, but if you are, just don't buy me socks, okay? Okay, so that was me talking about socks, and now you're listening to me again. Usually at this stage of the podcast, I talk about the rock and roll vocabulary, but I'm quite tired of talking to myself. So I think you can just go to the website directly to find all of the rock and roll vocabulary that I used in the episode, like tell someone off, go through the roof, etc. And who needs Dan the Man for rock and roll vocabulary? Because there were some pretty rock and roll terms today. On a serious note, one thing I would like to say is I would like to dedicate this episode to a friend of mine called Elliot Benfold that tragically died recently. He was my housemate at university, and the funeral is today, and I cannot go because I live in another country and it's very difficult for me and I feel very bad about it. So if you're listening, Elliot from heaven, this is for you. Anyway, thanks for listening to my boring voice, and I will see you on Thursday, and hopefully Dan the Man will be back. Rock on.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.